This is ready now to start building our upper structure. This part we did yesterday and it's starting to dry. You can see the coloration in the plaster. I've laid out the center line of the mirror system about the center, then using a compass swung a circle, located the 3 points that will be my mounting studs for doing the optical system arrangement. Now I want to build a truncated structure here to get my support to the rest of the sphere. Since most of it's quite geometric, what I've done is I've prefabbed most of it, and then this will set in. I've put a center pin to locate this through the optical axis of the system, so I can rotate it. This will allow me to adjust it when it's in just the right position. Then I'll run 3 bolts through and bolt the 2 assemblies together so that when I set up the rest of the plaster it won't move and won't crack. I'll also then fill it with plaster around the base, and then come back, fill this armature, and then plaster this part. This will be a continuation of this surface. That'll locate it. Now that'll be all rigid. I've set this template so that surface there is coincident with that sphere. So really all I have to do is just set this template on that, and I can just drag it across. So the sealer also forms a very tough skin on the plaster, and that's later on we'll be sanding that and then painting it to get a good polish, good finish on it, so that being ready. It's always a very delicate balance. Start to build up. Dirty, and it is difficult to really handle anything. I'll let this set up, clean it up, and do one. Okay, this is as far as I'm going to work tonight. Okay, this is having put on a final coat, the plaster. There's still marks on there, but that'll probably sand out pretty clean. I'm going to start rounding these edges. I want a good fillet so the fiberglass fibers will lay over this cleanly. I've marked using a parallel edge. I've marked the tangency point. I'll put a fillet in here. It'll come in tangent to about those surfaces roughly. This is all going to be hand filed. I've started cleaning up some of this surface. I got a little bit more to come down. I'll clean that up and I'll put a slight fillet radius on these, and this will all be just a hand. Back now on the mirror support assembly, I've cleaned off the flange. I just sawed it off and then sanded that. You'll notice that I have already started surfacing some of this, using a sanding block to knock off the high spots and lacquer putty filler to fill in the low spots. I've already started this detail. Before I go too far along, I want to start building in the fillet, and for that I'm going to basically use a simple disc, put in plaster, and then drag the shape on around. I'll also fill in some of these details. I'll let the plaster set, then I'll do some more handwork on the detail. pretty good for there. Okay, that's enough of that fillet. Okay, we'll get back to this. I've sanded it, sealed it. Okay, I put a primer on the surface area so I can clean that up so I can get that nice and smooth. I have a mass of plaster in here that I'm rolling around, and it adheres to the surface. And then once it sets, it'll be a pretty uniform coat. Okay, this is a couple days after we've made the skim coat. Now, logically, the right way to do this is actually to put the skim coat and then put the reinforcing coat on immediately afterwards. So this is dried out. Now, before I can put an extra layer of plaster with a burlap fabric reinforcement, I'm going to have to wet this down. Otherwise, the dry plaster will draw out the moisture from the new plaster and will cause a weak joint. And now I've already cut the burlap into nice segments that I'll be able to soak in plaster and then overlay to build up a thickness, and the burlap provides the fiber strength. Now the burlap's already been soaked. I'll keep it in the bag until I'm ready, and I will have to now start spraying and wetting down. We're adding plaster, hydrocal plaster. It's like a plaster parasol, but it's industrial, much stronger. Now plaster is added until finally small islands form on the top, and that gives you the proper density material. I'll let this sit for a while, then stir it. Normally it takes about 20 minutes before it starts to set. This is pretty old plaster and it may take longer. It's not that critical for what I'm doing now because I'm just going to be putting it in the fiber hem. Right, my burlap has already been dampened. So what I'll do is I'll soak this in the plaster. This is real messy. Okay. I'm going to set this in just close to the tape line because I'm going to be trimming it right on that tape line so I can. Actually, this plaster helps in partially absorbing. The burlap fibers are actually what give it its strength. Now I'm going to be setting this up. This is to make the foundation. It's quite light. I will set this up on the base with a modification to the shell. So it's pretty clean, quite smooth. It's a good replica of what we're going to be getting. This is going to be the tool to have the basin built up on it. Now this is exactly the same radius as the sphere is, and I want a little bit of clearance, so I want to modify this very slightly to about a 1/16 of an inch radius larger. So I'll be setting this up. I'll attach it bonded to this wood ring, and then I'll do a plaster sweep to build up the surface very, very slightly. Now I'm going to rework this original template. I've set it to a working base here, countersunk some screws to attach it rigidly to the base. Now I want a good radius, I want a good template, so I've set up a router, extended the radius on this, and then I've set this up so that my radius is 15.21 inches. Okay, let's try it. Cleaned up, and I've screwed it back onto the wooden back frame. Now I put in a center pin It's a bolt set in with a bushing, and I put a small shoe on here to make sure that this will ride on the surface to give me the clearance I want. I have also put in same size bushing, which I located from the center on top. So this will ride like that, and then that's my template. And then notice the template is just about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch above the surface. That'll get built up down to where that shoe is, and that shoe or that little flange is actually resting on the surface. Okay, we're ready to do our plaster buildup. Next I want to build the rim detail, and for that I've set up the template to do that one detail. This just drops in the same location. Actually, I've put it up a little bit high because the template will squeeze it down and it'll settle down closer to the actual desired location. Yes. Finish off the top. I have a bearing in here. I plugged it, so I'll put in the plaster to complete my good surface. If I ever have to, I can drill back and find that bearing to put a new system. I've taken the old template, and I'll use this template to sweep our surface. So we'll now set a batch of plaster on here. And then with a sanding block, we'll clean it up. Okay, that's been filled up now. We've also taken the rest of the surface and very lightly gone over it, fill in the light gaps and scratches. Then I'll sand it. Last pick this up, I've spray painted it with this black lacquer, and then the nicks and scratches I've filled in with the body putty filler, and then I've used a sanding block which is to the same contour, and wet sanded the whole surface. This will probably take a few more cleanup operations. You can see the small nicks and scratches, and I'll go in and do a little bit more lacquer filler, do another sanding, and then recoat it, and that'll be ready to actually make a part from it.